All right, good day, everyone. You're welcome to this space. My name is Omoleke Akitunde Abisoye. I'm a medical practitioner. I'm a medical doctor, and I also write. I tell stories that impact. I like to share my experiences to motivate people, to inspire them. This is something I like to do so much. And for the purpose of this particular conversation, there's an experience of mine that I wish to share, that I wish to talk about, and it's my National Youth Service experience, NYSC. It's been a long way coming. By the time of this recording, I'm done already with the service year program. However, I think that there are parts of that experience that are worth sharing. Some of the things that I went through that most corpers go through that have not been spoken about, especially from a very medical perspective or point of view, doesn't actually mean that non-medical persons cannot have one thing or the other to pick from this conversation. But I feel that it's important to have this rollout at a time like this. And for brevity's sake, I'm not going to be doing this conversation alone. I want to talk about my service year experience, of course. I served in Jigawa, by the way, Jigawa State. And I'm not going to be doing this conversation alone. I'm going to be doing this conversation with a friend of mine. We've been together for quite a while now. Maybe in the recent times we've become closer. Yes. She's a medical laboratory scientist, a child of God par excellence, a writer, and she does a whole lot of other things that I might not be able to cover in the brevity of this particular video. But let me allow her to do the rest of the introduction by herself. So here with me is...
Okay, Adeumi Messi Oluwatomilola, and that part of Child of God for Excellence got to me. So this is the documentary Chronicles of a Jigawa Corper doctor. So there's a whole lot to talk about, and I can't wait to get started. But let me start from the very beginning. So how did you feel when you got your call-up letter? Was it shocking? Were you expecting it? Jigawa, like how did you feel?
Well, to say a little, there was a part of me that was excited. There was a part of me that had a lot of unanswered questions. And trust me, when I mean excited, I mean excited for a lot of reasons, and some of which you later realize in the course of this particular video. But I was actually excited about the Jigawa experience, maybe because I had foreseen something like that. And when I mean foreseen something like that, I remember back then in school days, I happen to be somebody who is very passionate about missions and evangelism. And for some reason, I realized that particularly in a country like Nigeria, we have more of the parts of Nigeria that is yet to become believers. I mean Christians, I mean people who believe in the name and the person of Jesus. I realized that they are predominantly more in the northern part of Nigeria. And so as an undergraduate, somebody who is passionate about missions, I'd always loved to go all the way to the north. But if I stop there, then I'm saying a story that is not balanced. And what I mean by that is that passion, that love actually dwindled just about the time when I finished my undergraduate program. I meant that I started confronting realities of life. I started coming to terms with the fact that I needed money. I needed money. I wanted to stay close to families and friends. I was also concerned about the fact that, this Nigerian mindset that, that guy just finished university and then he went all the way to the north and then he suddenly disappeared or died or something like that. It was also that fear. So all of that didn't want to make me go again. But some way, somehow, I think I'd like to talk about that much later on. I just realized that everything was set and I was ready for the Jigawa experience. When I got my call-up letter, I remember calling my dad and I told him that, hello daddy, I've been posted to Jigawa State. But daddy said, ha, 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 and that ha kept on till I dropped the call. So that was actually what it felt like. There was the part of my uncertainty, but I was actually excited.
Yeah.
I was actually excited.
Okay, you were very excited. That's a good one. So the first question I'll ask you, it's an offshoot from that former question. It's the fact that how were you able to overcome the fear of traveling a long distance and the thought of insecurity? I know that for most graduates, most intending core members, we don't want to go far. I'm an intending core member, by the way. We don't want to go too far from home because There's that part where you have to spend a lot on transportation, and then you don't even know where you are going, as it were, especially when you are going somewhere extremely far from home, especially the northern side of Nigeria. So how were you able to overcome the fear of long distance travel and also insecurity?
All right. So before I get into that, before I get to answer that, I want to say that there are a lot of things that consolidate into what prospective core members actually are afraid about. For some, it's fear of insecurity. For some, it's the fear of the long distance travel, and a whole lot. I understand that we might not be able to cover all of that in this particular one, but I think one of the particular things that I would say really helped me. And by the way, let me say that the purpose of this video is actually to talk about some of the experiences that I had and some of the things that I went through. It might be a little biased for several reasons. One, because of course I did not serve in all parts of Nigeria. I served only in one particular state, and of course for 1 year I didn't serve again and again. So there might be some things that I would share that might not be the practicality, or might not be the reality rather, of what other core members will experience in other states. There might be some things that will be a little different and here and there like that, but you can be rest assured that we're actually in for the practical gist. So let me start from the first one, the fear of long distance travels. Now, I don't know when my parents are going to be getting to see this video, but I hope I'm not going to be beside them when they get to see it for the first time, because I know that they might actually, if I happen to be sitting beside them, they might actually want to throw me a punch if you get to realize some of the things I'll be saying. So I have this mindset, and I think it actually helped me to overcome the fear of long distance travel. And the mindset is that anything can kill anybody.
Wow.
Anything can kill anybody. And when I'm saying this, I am not saying this as somebody who has actually gone through the experience. I'm saying this as someone, I'm saying this because I know that that is something I've actually armed my mind with even before the service year experience. By the way, I traveled Jigawa to Lagos 6 times in the space of 1 year.
6 times?
For the record, 6 times plus X. And that X is the fact that I also had to travel from Jigawa to Abuja on some occasions for some exams that I wrote during that service experience.
Wow.
I applied that Lagos to Jigawa part 6 times in the space of that 1 year. That's one. Also to add that in the month of March, that happens to be the month that I did my personal parade, I actually traveled that journey 3 times.
3?
All right. So that is for the records. And well, I can say that today because God is glorified. God saw me through those journeys. But like I was saying, it was actually more about the fact that I realized that anything can kill anybody. Let me give 2 examples to consolidate that. I remember there was a time when a fellow core member that we served together in the north together was concerned about the fact that he was broke, he was hungry, he really didn't have much to eat and all of that. So he decided to walk to where we call Tesha. For those that probably, Tesha is like a motor park in the north. So he decided to go to Tesha to get something to eat. All he could afford that afternoon was just these creamy biscuits. So he went there and went to get the biscuits. He had gotten the biscuits. He wanted to cross the covert, only to see one stray driver run past the front of the place where he passed. It was just the split of a second. That guy would have hit him, and that would have been death immediately. Death immediately. Now, that is somebody who necessarily didn't travel. That was somebody who just went to get something to eat. He lost his appetite, of course, after that experience. But that was somebody who just went to eat. Needless to talk about the fact that, okay, all right. So, while I was preparing for, just before the service year experience, I had an opportunity to travel all the way to the north for a mission awareness program like that. And I remember telling my mom, and my mom scared me with something. I can never forget that in my life. It was actually what reshaped my perspective or my mindset about journeys to the north. My mom said, you know, I have hypertension. You want to go all the way to the north? Who does that? I said, no, it's not like that. I'm not saying that I want to kill you. I'm only saying I want to go to the north. My mom insisted that I shouldn't travel. She actually had to call my dad, and both of them successfully convinced me against traveling. May I let you know that, well, not something so that I'm so proud to talk about, but some way, somehow, about 5 months down the line, I actually lost my mom after that experience. I didn't travel to the north. My mom still died of one of the a medical emergency of one of the illnesses that she had at that time. that all efforts to resuscitate are proved abortive about. But in the long run, what I'm saying is that people actually die, whether they travel long distances or short distances. People lose their lives. We have core members who necessarily didn't travel far distances, who served at the junction of their houses, and some way somehow they still lost their lives during the service experience. So I think that was one thing that made me rigid and firm in my decision that it's not really about the distance, it's about the fact that God preserves the life
right.
of his own beloved. Aside from that, and I had the mindset that if I was going to be going that kind of a distance, I have an anchor, and that is Christ, my Savior, my Lord. If it wasn't time for me to exit this world yet, He's not going to take me. The balance to that is that I was also not making foolish decisions. When I was traveling, I wasn't just traveling anyhow. I was breaking my journey. I remember when I was going for the first time, I traveled from Lagos to Oshogbo first. From Oshogbo, I went to Kaduna. I slept over in Oshogbo, slept over in Kaduna before going to Kano and then to Jigawa. So I used, let me say that it is important to use common sense in the sense of sense of simple precautionary measures.
Yes, sir.
Don't travel late in the night. Ensure that the bus you're taking is from the park and all of those things. All of those ones ensured. I think it's important for everyone to realize that anything can actually kill anybody. We know that Nigerian roads are bad, but it's important to realize that it is not really the long or the short distance that kills the person. It's not just about that distance. It's more about the fact that whether you stay close or you stay far, something will see the man. Let me stop from there because I have tendency to go.
All right, no problem. I think that's really profound. It's not the long distance or the short distance. Something is definitely going to kill a man. And I like the fact that you said that our own anchor is in God. God is our anchor. He's the one who preserves our lives. So whether we go far from home or we stay close to home,
Yes,
our eyes should be on the Lord. Our gaze should be on the Lord. Thank you so much. I really love that. So let me ask the next question. Now, one of the common states that we intending COP members would like to serve is Lagos State, and it's because we've been told that there are a lot of opportunities in Lagos. You would get a good PPA, they might even retain you. Okay, if you don't get Lagos, go to Port Harcourt, go to Abuja. So how were you able to also cross that barrier? How were you able to cross the fear of missed opportunities and maybe fear of will I make money in Jigawa? How were you able to handle that?
All right, so I think this is a very important question, and reason because I know whoever is probably seeing this video right now will have a mindset, and that mindset is that, oh, these guys just get to paint everything beautiful and colorful, but that's not the case. And I beg to say in this regard that I would like to talk about both sides of the coin. And what I mean by that is that I happen to be somebody who grew up in Lagos. I was raised in Lagos. I schooled for quite a number of years in Lagos. And even before going to Jigawa, I was in Lagos. While I was in Jigawa, I had to come to Lagos for a number of things. So to answer the question of missed opportunities, the truth is that you cannot compare the opportunities that you find in Lagos to opportunities that you find in Jigawa.
Absolutely.
But may I also let you know that there are specific, particular opportunities for each and every one of us. The fact that Lagos is a land that abounds with opportunities does not necessarily mean that we all will find our bread in Lagos.
Sure.
The balance to that is that while I was in Jigawa, I actually had the course to travel down to Lagos. Like I said, I applied Lagos to Jigawa in the month of March 3 times. I came all the way from Jigawa to get some things done, and I could tell you that I picked up some responsibilities in that very short time that availed me quite the sum. I mean, I saw opportunities. I saw opportunities. And so the reality of the fact, the truth of the matter is that there are actually opportunities more in Lagos than maybe the majority of other parts of Nigeria. But the question is, personally for me, it's not just opportunities that is leading. I believe that every core member out there should actually go to anywhere or serve anywhere with a sense of purpose. With a sense of purpose. For me, I had a sense of purpose around reaching out to communities that really do not have physical presence of believers in their gathering. I wanted them it wasn't primarily about going all around and then telling them about, oh, this is my faith, this is the God I serve and all of that. It was more about making them realize, making them see what it looks like, what it feels like to have a believer, a Christian, a child of God, somebody who believes in Jesus around. And what do I mean? In the places where I served in Brunei local government. For the records, as at 2024, 2025, when I served, there was not a single church in that local government.
Wow.
And that, by inference, meant that there were only a handful of believers. And when I mean a handful, you could probably count them on two hands, perhaps less than 10. And those 10 were actually visitors to their community. Of course, that's aside core members. So it therefore meant that the perspective that the indigenes have about Christians is just as much as they see us do. So if I happen to eat on the road, their mindset is that, oh, Christians don't have a problem eating on the road. If I happen to wear clothes that are not modest, their perspective is that, oh, Christians have no problem with wearing anything on the road. So it therefore meant that that thing that people call character evangelism. Well, I'm not going to go into that today, but that thing that people call character evangelism was actually more predominantly there, because whatever life you lived was the assumption or their presupposition of what and how a Christian lives. So those were more important for me than the so-called myriads of opportunities. And let me bust your brain to say that there are actually also opportunities in the north, only that we only get fed with what people want us to see. It might not be as much as what we have in Lagos and all of those climes. The question you ask yourself is that the people that the so-called opportunities that, now this is an open question, I know that this might be a little bit of a debate. Not everybody will likely admit or will likely agree with me in this that I want to say, but the truth is that for the myriads of people, especially for those that are not necessarily medical corps members, or those that have already established businesses in their hometown, or for people that just relocated because they were just looking for opportunities, the question you ask is that how many of those opportunities did many of us really get? Now, I do not dispute the fact that people actually got opportunities, but I'm saying that opportunities also abound in the north if you care to look around, if you care to check. So let me leave it like that. Because of the tendency to say too much.
All right, that tendency to say too much, don't worry, it's needed. So yeah, I think I'm holding on to the fact that purpose should be the determining factor.
That's the point.
Not necessarily opportunities, because in
opportunities actually abound everywhere. It might not be equally distributed.
Yes, but there are opportunities everywhere.
And so, once you have the idea of what you're looking out for, what kind of opportunity you're looking out for, that might actually be the one to determine what you do, whether you want to, what options you want to go for, go far distance, do all of these other options that we have, relocation and all of that. But it's actually not just to go blindly by the mind that, okay, I'm looking for opportunities. You go to Lagos, you can stay 1 year in Lagos and you don't really get anything done.
Yeah, true. All right, so I'm still going to hold on to that purpose, should I call it the purpose statement now? When do you know, okay, for you, for example, you decided to stay in Jigawa. For some other corp member, they might decide to relocate, to redeploy, not to stay. So what's the balance between faith and common sense? When should a corp member decide to stay? When should you redeploy? I'm taking an offshoot from the purpose statement now. And also the method or mode of, I know this will be very, very funny, that the method or mode of redeployment, what's the Christian perspective to it? Because there's this thing that people will tell you that you should have what's this thing, health report, medical report or something like that. I even saw something very funny. I saw something very funny online some days ago where a guy wanted to relocate based on medical reasons, and then they wrote in the medical report that he had PCOS. So he got to the clinic in the camp and he was asked that, are your ovaries paining you? And the guy legit said, yes, my ovaries are paining me. So what's the Christian perspective to the medical redeployment, should I call it route? And then when should we redeploy? When should we stay?
Okay.
Faith versus common sense.
On the matter of faith versus common sense, I think this is an exhaustive part, and I'm not sure I'll be able to really cover all of the things that I really might wish to say, but I'll just touch a few basics and things that I feel are important. Now, to start with, let me start with the point of these medical reports that core members usually bring to camp. And let me say that maybe that's one of the first defining moments of what you actually stand for and what you represent. And the reason is because if you claim that you're Christian, if you claim that you believe in God in the first place, I think it's important to just stay true to that decision. If, like the statements of is it Elijah or Elisha now, if Baal be God, let him, serve him. If God is God, let him. So I think it doesn't really, if you were going to be Christian, the idea of cooking up fake diagnosis in medical reports to present in camp, I don't think it's Christian in attitude. It's not even that I don't think. Apologies. It is not actually Christian in mindset. And now, to be very funny, to be a little funny, some people actually even come with things like, you see a guy coming to service here, and then the medical report says he has PCOS. Now, for those that might not know, that PCOS means polycystic ovarian syndrome. Now, how on earth does a guy who doesn't even have an ovary have PCOS? And the same guy was told that so you have pain on your flank, and he still nodded yes. I mean, how do you have ovaries as a guy? So sometimes when you look at stuff like that, you realize that is not faith in any way. And then the unfortunate part is that many of us, that kind of PCOS guy now is going to get out there and say, thank God my relocation worked out. It was all because of God. God be praised. No. If I believe that if you did relocation and you use that kind of medical report, it's okay and enough to just say that my relocation worked out. Don't further implicate yourself by saying God caused it to work. I mean, how can you say that God, the all-sufficient God, gave you PCOS? And you of course, I know that there's also another perspective to this discussion on the part of people actually saying that how would you pick up a diagnosis that is not your own, and then later on it becomes your own. But that aside, I think it's even important to just say in short that if you really believe in God, now there are legitimate ways for you to pursue relocation if you actually indeed need relocation, or if you want relocation. And the scheme is not against that. I believe so, because NYSC also made it possible for people to relocate based on medical conditions. But I think it should actually be valid and legitimate. If you want to pursue a relocation because of medical reasons, it's important to state the obvious medical reasons, not like saying you have PCOS. I mean, for a guy. And the ones that are even very common is peptic ulcer disease.
Yes.
And then sometimes the question I ask people is that, what exactly is special in peptic ulcer disease that cannot be managed in Kano,
yes,
that you want to stay in Lagos for? Because you want to manage peptic ulcer disease. Now, I do not dispute, I do not undermine the pain that can come with peptic ulcer disease, because sincerely, I feel for patients, people who actually have those disease conditions. I'm not trying to downplay the pains and the severity of some of those complaints, but I'm just saying that sometimes some of those things are not legitimate. Yeah. And if you want to put it on the basis of faith at all, I think it's not even it's a no-go area. So that's be my point of view concerning that. On the issue of relocation and redeployment,
as related to purpose,
I think it's more important for people to pursue purpose. Now, one of the reasons why people choose redeployment or relocation is actually because of opportunities. Now, I would not necessarily say that if I were to give my own candid advice, I would say that you should try and explore and go beyond the places where you were raised or where you were built. And for several reasons. One, for faith reasons, and two, for exposure reasons. But let's even say we want to play on the part of relocation and redeployment. I think there are legitimate ways to pursue relocation and redeployment other than going on other things. And predominantly, I would say that people should pursue purpose rather than just going for options. And it might be important to really analyze some of these locations and put them in perspective. Say, for example, if you see opportunities abound in Lagos or in Southwest or in your hometown or in the state of origin, have we really tried to put check and balances to that? Let me give a typical example. There's no way you can justify the fact that agriculture pays down here in Southwest compared to the North. Is it by land mass? Is it by availability of trainings, agro trainings? By that, the local government where I served, I can't count the number of agro trainings that was done for natives of the community that involved sharing fertilizers for free, giving out knowledge and all of that for free to people, and core members, of course, were also invited, were also carried along, were also able to participate in some of those programs. So if you talk about opportunities, I think sometimes it's just one mirage of a thing that many of us try to define. It is a totally different ballgame for somebody who has an established business, that is running in a particular location, or somebody who does some particular businesses that can obviously or are almost impossible to do in other locations. Maybe not even impossible, maybe just about the fact that the person has established a customer base, that the person wants to, for that font, stay in a particular location. But you realize on the long run that many of people who actually apply for relocation and redeployment do not actually have a justifiable reason. Many of us just want to stay at home. So talk about exploring other places, talk about the sense of purpose itself. I think it pays to actually go all the way. And that is where the matter of these two things come in. Now, let me put a last touch on faith versus common sense. You see, in the reality, they're actually not two ends of a coin. In reality, they're actually not two ends of a coin. If when we talk about faith, an average club member is probably thinking that, okay, faith is go anywhere they send you to go, while common sense is stay at home. But that is actually not totally true. That is not totally correct. We've had people who served in places where they finished serving, they got opportunities, they were retained there, and then they went on like that. Life went on like that for them. We have had people who made tangible, reasonable connections in the places where they served. You see, on the long run, some other question that we might even want to ask ourselves as club members is that, am I valuable enough to create a niche for myself wherever I'm found? You see, sometimes it's more about the fact that sometimes we do not really have value in ourselves. And what you don't have in yourself, even if you go to anywhere in this country, it might be difficult to really make a sense of living or a purpose out of what you have at your disposal. So I would say summarily, or to end this particular note, that opportunities are bound everywhere. The frequency of those opportunities or how much they abound can differ from one place to the other. But I would rather say that if you're posted to a place that you do not really like, it might be important to critically sit down and analyze what are the peculiarities of this environment, what are the things that I can make do. For example, in the place where I served, would I say that opportunities abound? Maybe they were limited, but they were obviously still opportunities. Now, for some of us, we're actually looking for ways by which we can impact people. Let me make mention of that also. May I make you realize that some of those places that we're actually running away from are actually the best places to make impact. What do I mean? In the local government where I served, by the books, we were less than 4 or 5 doctors, medical doctors practicing in that local government. Now, I mean a whole local government having just 4 or 5 doctors. So, as a medical practitioner, where do you think impact will actually be more felt? In an environment or in a city like Lagos, where there are medical services all around the place, or in a place like Jigawa and rural settlements of Jigawa, where there is scarcity and paucity of people. We've had times when I was called as late as 12 in the midnight that the woman is bleeding. Now, the one that I particularly remember was the story of a particular woman, first pregnancy, first pregnancy. She delivered about 2 a.m. at traditional birth attendant's house, and then she kept on bleeding, but the person who attended to her told her that it was normal and that she was going to recover. And then she kept on bleeding up until the night of the following day. That was about 24 hours after the bleeding started. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, I got a call that they have a patient in emergency. And funnily, of course, you can't expect doctors to be on call every day, because in those places you don't even have those doctors readily available. So we got a call that this woman was bleeding and she was dying. And what was she dying from? She was dying simply from perineal tear. I mean, she could bleed the whole of her life from that tear, because it was actually a massive or a quite long tear. And what did we do that night? We didn't do any other thing special than just hang up fluids for her, repair the tear, and then we did our serology screening, did basic necessary things just the ideals that need to be done in a sane environment. And she recovered. Now, for that woman, her story is particularly special to me because that was her first pregnancy. That was going to dictate her perspective of pregnancy for the rest of her life. You never can tell what the offspring of that woman is going to amount to. And those are just common important reasons why some of those things become important. So do you talk about making impact? Maybe not necessarily making a lot of money, but this impact lies there. I don't know if you understand. Yes, impact lies there, and a whole lot of other things. And let me also say that if we want to say that we don't care, the truth is that the way we treat fellow Nigerians, the way we treat one another, is a reflection of the values we place on one another. And you can't expect to treat other Nigerians like trash, because if you claim that, well, she's not important, let me just go where I will get money, and you're not really concerned or bothered about other persons, then you're not even doing this the Christian way in the first place. Because when you look at, from a very Christian perspective, now if you look at the life of Jesus, there are places where, I think in the book of John, where Jesus actually fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. And then scripture says that they came looking for him the next day. And then they wanted, of course, as usual. And then you realize you see Jesus going to some other climes. You see him going to some other places. You expected him to come to a place where there's limelight, to come to a place where everybody is going to be giving all the cheer, and then the cameras are all over, and then the applause. Everywhere is. But then you see Jesus going to the place like to meet a woman like the Samaritan woman. Places that were really termed as places of oblivion, in a real sense. So if we were to put based on the practicality of faith, we actually realize that some of those places are actually the best places to serve. Sure. Forget the fact that, not to talk of the fact that NGO opportunities will actually abound more there, because NGOs actually go to underserved communities anyways. Sure. So if you're looking for opportunities like that for the medical practitioner, they actually abound more in the north, and they are even more readily available, more readily accessible in places like that. Let me hit this one in that for an average medical officer as a corper, who is likely going to maybe post NYSC anyways, this might not necessarily be applicable to NYSC, post NYSC, who is going to decide to stay in the north, and the one who is going to decide to come back to Lagos for a program. If you earn an average of maybe 350 to 450,000 naira in a month in Jigawa, your standard of living, cost of living, cannot be compared to somebody who earns the same amount in a place like Lagos. I understand that a lot of people will have reservations concerning this, but let me just leave it like that. They are concerning faith and common sense. They are not really two ends of the spectrum. I think they're actually more on the same side. And if you be Christian enough, you realize that the way majority of core members do things, I'm not saying all core members, the majority of core members is actually not the way of the scriptures. It's not the way of the Bible. Let me end like that.
That's thought-provoking. Trust me. I feel that we core members forget the part of service in the NYSC. It's National Youth Service Corps. So
service.
Yes, impact service. And wow, I'm going to sleep thinking about that tonight, that my service here is actually for service. It's for impact, not just to create opportunities, future opportunities, but also to give back and to serve. Sorry
to cut you in. Let me even come on from a very practical point of view on this part. Let me talk about what income and earning was like in Jigawa. Now, as a core member that served in Jigawa, as at the time when I served, 2024, 2025, I happened to have earned from four sources. Now, this might create a little bit of a bias, because that was not necessarily applicable for all core members except for medical corps members. Okay, so I was actually earning from four sources. NYC was paying 33,000 naira, right? The hospital I was serving was paying just a stipend. Now, those things were called allowances, not salaries, for a purpose. Okay, so the hospital where I served was paying 20,000 naira. Add that up to 33, that was
53.
That was 53. I was serving in the general hospital, so the state government, the Ministry of Health for Jigawa State, was paying a call allowance of 50,000 naira per month.
That's 103.
That's 103. And then Jigawa State government was paying remuneration to corpers. Was giving remuneration to corpers. Comes once in 2 months, meaning that they pay for 2 months together at once. Now, for core members, for corper doctors, they were paying 26,500 or thereabouts, amounting to about 53 in 2 months. So they pay every 2 months, they pay 53 down. So let's just say 23. So if you add that up to 103, that was about 126 or thereabouts. Now, put that on a scale averagely to what other core members are earning in other states. Now, get the point of view in this regard. The point of view is actually, I'm not trying to say that you are going to earn money and you're going to be rich. No. It's allowances. But sometimes you realize that it's not just about the money. Even the heart of service that is put into that practice is also very important. But let's even talk about the money squarely. Put it on the same radar with other states that are actually doing the same. Put it on the same radar with all these other states. How much are they earning? As at the time I was serving, I learned that Oyo corpers, doctors, I stand to be corrected, I didn't serve in Oyo State, but I learned that their gross total income, when you put all of the allowances together, was barely about 110 or 120 or thereabouts. So on the long run, it's reasonably the same thing. The worst of the comparison will be to compare with Lagos. And I'm going to get to that. The Jigawa corper did not obviously earn up to how much a corper in Lagos will earn. But you realize that if you're working as a corper in Lagos, you have to be there for every time that you are in service. Unlike places like Jigawa, where there was still a bit of liberty, there was still a bit of opportunity to pursue other dreams. Now, I might not be able to put all of this in words on this particular point of view, of course, because we don't know who is going to be coming across this video. But I'm going to say that the Corper who served in Jigawa likely has more opportunity to, if the person is an orator, to write more books, to do more video covers, to reach out to people, to reach out to the community, to do a lot of other impactful things. I tell you, there was a day a friend of mine and myself went out and we just used less than 3,500 naira to get some mini stuffs, and we were able to bless as much as 20 children. Needed to see the joy and excitement in the face of those children. Now, we did not necessarily tell them that we were preaching Jesus. We did not necessarily say that accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, but we have formed a perspective in them about what an average Christian looks like.
Yeah.
And that was very important. When Jesus spoke to the Samaritan woman, it was not first about my name is, and if you don't believe in me. It only started from engaging her concerning the kind of life, impacting the kind of life she lived. By the time she was going to be done with that conversation, it wasn't just about who she was. It was more about the fact that she became something else totally. And sometimes those little that we do actually counts.
Yeah.
So I'll just leave it like that. So I'm saying summarily concerning the cost part, that as much as you can say that Lagos core members earn more than Jigawa core members, put in perspective also that the cost of living in Lagos is not the same as in Jigawa. So if you're going to be balancing it, if you say Lagos core members are earning maybe 300,000 naira per month or 500,000 naira per month, and the Jigawa core member is earning maybe an average of less than 150, you also have to consider what other things that will amount to money is the Jigawa core member doing that the Lagos core member is unable to do. How much is the Jigawa core member spending on feeding and all of that in a month? You also have to look at, okay, how much impact, reaching out to others, philanthropic, or how do I put it now, activities or engagement, is the Lagos core member able to engage in compared to the Jigawa core member, and so on and so forth like that. Some of these things might not be things that are obviously said with the mouth. Some of those things you actually come to them or come into them by experience. I would also say that there are some things that I might not be able to put voice to on this video because of some other reasons. But let me say that if you're going to put balances, put on check and balance, there are a lot of other things to consider beyond how much is coming in monthly. Let me leave like that.
All right, so let's go on to fact and myth about the knot. So tell us about the knot. You served in Jigawa. That's not.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this part. Now,
that's not. So tell us about what does it look like to be a Corper doctor or Dr. Corper in Jigawa.
All right.
The food, the hospitality, insurgency too. Yes, we need to hear that about that part too. Can you go on?
All right, let me start from insurgency. Because I know that is the number one fear of most core members. And let me say that it is not all the parts of the knot that actually experiences insurgencies. And whether you like it or not, insurgencies, whether big or small, actually happen in many places. Now, I'm saying that to the point that, let me use a point of reference. Recently, there was, as at the time of recording this video, we are still in the wake of a riot, a crisis that happened between the Ifon and the Ilobu people of Osun State, and it was a big hit of a problem. I actually thought it was something little until I had to travel past that route. Was it yesterday? Yesterday, and I realized that houses were actually vandalized. Some persons were burnt at night while they were still in their houses. I don't know what the statistics say about the casualties, but the truth of the matter is that a corper could have been a victim of the same.
True.
So it therefore means that insurgencies can start at any point in time. I do not dispute the fact that insurgencies are in some places of the north, but you realize that foundation are the number one. The National Youth Service Corps usually does not post core members to places where there are insurgencies. Say for example, I have friends who served in Maiduguri, Borno State, and as at the time of recording this video, I can say boldly that for those that I am aware of that were posted to that state, majority of them were in state capital where there were no insurgencies. I don't think there was any that was posted to local governments where crises were. And in Maiduguri, as at the time I was as at the time of recording this video, most of the insurgencies that were happening were happening in local governments, not in the state capital. Coppers were posted to the state capital. So it therefore means that, well, I don't know how you rate our government, and I'm not trying to be a solicitor for the government in this video. I'm only saying that at least to be reasonable, the government usually do not post corps members to places where there are obvious insurgencies. Matter of fact, in the local government where I served, Benua local government, in case there's anyone who wants to verify that, year 2024-2025, there was not a single crisis in that local government throughout. I served in a place where I actually sometimes occasionally have to work because of for the virtue of my work around 12 midnight, 2 a.m. and thereabouts. Whenever I'm on call to check the patients on the ward and all of that. And I can tell you very well that those places will actually safe. Now, I do not dispute the fact that at the time of this video, there were insurgencies in places like Zamfara and all of that, and to mention a few. But at least the scheme does not post corps members to places where there are obvious insurgencies. Let me also say that insurgencies happen in various places, even in Southwest, at some point in time. So that's one to start with. Number two is that there are actually a number of very peaceful northern states, and let me give example of some of those states where there's actually peace and calm in the north. The typical example is Jigawa State. Jigawa State is on the average very calm and peaceful. And another place where there is peace and calm in the north would include places like Kano, the likes of Gombe, the likes of Jos Plateau, Kaduna, even Yobe State, relatively, because there are still some parts of Yobe State that borders Maiduguri that there were crises. Now, some of these facts I will not be giving statistics, but I'm just telling you about experiences, physical experiences that we had at those points in time. So I think on an average, there are actually a number of northern states that are actually calm and they are peaceful and there are no insurgencies. It does not deny the fact that there were insurgencies in some parts of the country. The next one that I want to talk about is hospitality. Yeah. And I think I beg to say I'm Yoruba by tribe. Yoruba by tribe. Omo bibi ile Yoruba ni mi. I think that's the point where I should introduce myself properly. Akitunde Omo Moleke Abisoye. Yeah, I said that to make you realize that I'm actually born and bred in Yoruba land. But I beg to say that I think they are more hospitable than we are. I beg to say that. Let me give practical examples because that is the reason why this video exists. Okay. I have a friend that I made while I was in Jigawa who owns a store. He was the owner of the store. He's not an errand boy in that store. He owns the owner of the store. All through the time while I was serving in the north, I don't think there was a single time when I did POS transfer in a shop that I collected a dime from him. Wow. This was somebody who, amidst other things, also talks to me, relates to me about business, talks to me about, okay, if I need any help, any assistance in the local government, in the environment, and so on like that. Now, that's one. Now, you really find that applicable here. And let me even say that for places where their POS shops actually give charges, their charges are way more reasonable than our own charges down here. That's one. So it means that they're actually more hospitable when it comes to business than we are. Second is the fact that if a northerner, the typical northerner in most of those rural communities, is actually called a particular commodity. Now, I'm not talking about people who come from Southwest or who come from the East to do business. Call northerners actually tell you that the commodity is 1,500 naira. Trust me, it is 1,500 naira. Whether you ride a bicycle to their shop or you bring a venter, it's 1,500 naira. At least for all the experiences I've had all through the places I went in the north. So it means that they are actually more honest and honorable business people than we are. That's to put a second. Number three is that there were some opportunities that I got. There were some surgical outreaches that was done while I was in the local government when I served that really fetched some returns for me. Many of those stuffs were actually courtesy of some of the people I served with. An example is to call out a name, the HOD nursing of the hospital where I served with, the medical director of the hospital where I served with, the matron in the antenatal clinic of the hospital, Brunel General Hospital where I served with. These are, to mention a few of some of the people that were very, very kind to me. And I enjoyed that generosity from a lot of people. And I wasn't the only one. That was also the same testimony from many of the people that we also served with. So I think on the generally speaking, they're actually more hospitable than than we are.
Yeah.
They are kind-hearted than we are, and that would be my submission.
Okay. So maybe just a little further. The food and the weather. So how was it like? Briefly. Briefly.
The weather is actually can actually be very very hot. I mean, there are times when you sleep on the bed and then you wake up, you would even think you you bed wet because I mean
Drenched
your
in
whole
sweat.
body will drenched in sweat. There are times like that.
All right, all right. So I think I'm done with the bulk of my questions. Probably the last one, and then I'll allow you to just add other things you want us to know. Is how did you? This is not part of what we wrote, but just allow me. How were you able to cope? You mentioned that you had only a handful of Christians in that local government. So how was it like? How were you able to sustain your faith as personally, not even reaching out to the community? How did you not get discouraged? Were there times you felt dry? Were there how were you able to navigate that part? And then from there, from answering that particular question, you can go into any other thing.
All right, so maybe this is the most emotional part of this video for me, and it's actually about the fact that the mindset or the perspective. I think I like to say mindset again, courtesy of Mindset Studio. Okay, so let's call this advertisement. But trust me, you actually have to check that studio. They do very brilliant and excellent job at
Yes.
Mindset Studio. All right,
Emphasis on excellence.
yeah, excellent. Yeah, trust me. So the mindset that I went to the north with was a little different from what I met there. I mean, I went there with the mindset of okay, we're going to go all the way to go door to door and to get everybody that we're going to meet there converted. Now, that's not so far from what we actually experienced, but I think there was lots more. Part of the experience that we had was that we had opportunity to speak with people, to talk to them about our faith, talk to them about Jesus. Some were converted, some got born again, and all of that. We have testimonies, and I tell you sincerely, to God be the glory. Rural rugged Jigawa State was one notable one. But that aside, I think there was more to it. And when I mean there was more to it. First and foremost, in the local government where I served, there was no church. There was not a single church. So all we had as believers was just the Corper's fellowship that we usually gathered in at that time. So it meant that God had to change my mindset again concerning what the Christian life is usually like. You know, for many of us, I think I should say this at this point in time, that I envy and I covet the Christianity of Christians who actually grew up, who were raised in the north, more than the Christianity of those that actually were raised in the southwest. And what do I mean? I think I've seen this solid character. Their character is, they are well built. I mean, these are not just tongue-talking Christians. These are not just Christians who go to 10, 17 programs in a month. I mean, these are Christians who stand for what they represent. I wish there was a better way to express this rather. I actually met Christians who were really genuine Christians. I met Christians who were not really carried away or overwhelmed with all of the percussions and and all of the showbiz that actually happens in this part of the world, I mean southwest Nigeria. I'm not saying that those things are necessarily bad, but I'm saying that I met Christians who learned to joy in the Holy Ghost in the absence of keyboard, in the absence of percussion, in the absence of all of the Marys. I mean, they needed to see what a typical Corper's fellowship looks like. With just tambourine as the drum, and then the melodious voices of core members left and right. Because you don't even have all of those luxuries in many of the places. Of course, there are places in the north where you have a handful of churches. I remember there is in Hadija local government where you can still see a few churches. But Brunua and some other local governments where I served in, I think there's Brunua, there's Kasama, there's Guri, and all of that. There are a number of local governments in the north where there are only churches. So it therefore means that those that were raised as Christians over there, they might be few, but they were genuine, they were solid. There was something that happened to their faith that made them unshakable, that made them resilient. And I think an average southwestern Christian might actually need to come to converse with people like that, interact with them and relate with them. Let me also say that of the people that I met in the place where I served, I think the northern Christians, the northern guys, were actually more reliable and had more solid character than some of the Christians, some of us that actually came from southwest. So they might be few, but those Christians over there are genuine, they are solid. Now, let me also say that concerning how I managed to sustain myself, of course, we had the Corpers Fellowship, and I think at this point I would like to say that wherever you finally go to, whether you want to relocate or you want to be deployed or whatever you want to do with your service year experience, I think it's important to, like the words of my very good friend, like your own words, it's important to have a house of bread. It's important to have a house of bread, a place where you can feed from. You know, sometimes you can be lost in, okay, I'm in this Lagos, or I'm just using Lagos for example. I'm in this Lagos, I'm in this Abuja for this service experience to make money and to make this and to make that. And then you realize that after 1 year of service experience, you are just as dry as any other thing. There is not really anything that you can point out to as major or significant encounters that you had during this period. I think that was one of the advantages that Northern Nigeria gave me the opportunity to have a taste of. The fact that you knew that even if you were a handful of Christians, those Christians were brave as lions. They were solid persons. They were not people that were easily tossed left and right. Matter of fact, I think if I would have even loved to do shout out to some of my friends that I met. I think a particular one is my dearest friend. While I served, there was Blessing, there was Hannah, there was Emmanuel Tefa, there was Emmanuel Usman. There were a number of them. There was Joshua Emmanuel. Some of them were raised from the north. There was Gadiel the Shark. I mean, a number of them. And these guys are solid Christians. They are really Christians. These are people that will come and sit with you, and then you have meaningful conversations. So I think those were the things that helped us. Coupled with the fact that NCCF was a beautiful place. NCCF was a beautiful place. I don't know what NCCF looks like down here in Southwest, but NCCF over there was a beautiful place. Trust me. We went on rural rugged evangelism. We did a number of other things that were very, very impactful and significant. And we were the minority in many of those northern states. But our being minority did not reduce the solidity of our faith, our convictions about what we knew we were serving and all of that. Matter of fact, I even beg to say that it was actually even some of the Christians that came from southwestern Nigeria that actually came up there to build themselves, to solidify, to build themselves and to become better Christians, to grow and mature in spiritual things. Because you realize that on the long run, even though many of us from Southwest, here Joshua, here Caleb, here Israel, here James, here you see James, who is still doing people. I mean, the guy who sold butter bread for coconut bread for me a few days ago, bears David. I mean, for God's sake, how do you talk about the David that is still doing 419? So, but over there, many of those that came actually saw what practical Christianity looks like from the guys that we met from there. And on this northern Christianity thing, I think I'd like to call out Bauchi. I've realized, I've not met so many of them, I've met a handful, but I've realized that all the Christians I've met from Bauchi, they have this very different breed of spiritual maturity. Bauchi and Kaduna. I don't know what happened to those two states. I don't know. I mean, this is a live video. I don't know what this video will look like. I don't know who's listening to this video, but I would say that Bauchi and Kaduna, the Christians I met, I came from those two places.
And there was a particular story of the main character, Femi, who was a very strong Christian back at home. And then when he got to youth service, he decided to relax. So wherever we are, whether in the north, southwest, south, anywhere at all, the Christian witness should be strong. People should see you and know that you're a Christian without any doubt. So
and I think that's one thing that I would like to give as the more important part of this video. The more important part of the reason for this video is not primarily about just going to the north to serve. As much as I would always encourage anybody who wants to do that. But I think the more important part of this video is making people realize that it's not just about opportunities.
Yes, sir.
Purpose should actually be the definer of wherever you're going. Like I was going to say earlier on, that it is not really about how far you go. It's not really about how far you travel. It's more about what kind of life did you live where you found yourself. We have Christians who did not do well in the places where I served, even despite being in the north, and we also have people who did very well down here in Southwest. So I think it's more about letting purpose be the definer, the drive, what pushes you to wherever you're going. Let purpose be that opportunity that you're looking out for. Whether you want to do relocation or whatever you think you want to do, let purpose, let the sense of purpose, let the sense of God's leading be the definer of everything and whatever you're going to do.
All right. So I think we created a list based on that the other time, or maybe I had a list, and it was a house of bread, brethren, purpose, and assignment. So those three things are very, very
And I think I should
non-negotiable.
recap that to a house of bread,
Yes.
a place where you can get spiritual nourishment, brethren, where you can meet with people of like minds, whether virtual or physical, especially physical, anyways, so that they can help. I mean,
Yes, sir.
and then third one being purpose and
and
assignment.
assignment.
Purpose and assignment. And let me also say that on purpose and assignment, it's not just about the churchy kind of perspective or mindset. It's also about what exactly is God calling you to. Even if you feel that God is raising you as an apostle in the business place, in the marketplace, that's also purpose for you.
Yes, sir.
So that should be the better definer of where you want to go to, not just where opportunities abound. Because on the long run, a lot of people will go to where opportunities abound and will not really make anything out of it.
All right. So I think this is just about it. Maybe just should I call it an epilogue, as it were? I feel that our service here should also be that time where we seek the Lord for the next phase of our life. Even if I know that most people enter youth service without having enough clarity. You just went from primary school to secondary school to university. Now you are done. The next thing is youth service. So by the time you are ending youth service, you are kind of confused because you don't know exactly what to do with your life. So your youth service is a very, very good opportunity to find out what God will have you do with your life, to find purpose. We've been talking about purpose and assignment. Some people don't even know what purpose and assignment is. So it's a good time for you to find out what God will have you do with your life. And like he said, it's not just being on the pulpit, it's not just having to preach and all of that. There are many things that God wants us to use our lives to do. So your youth service here should be that time where you find out exactly what the Lord will have you do with your life. So if you don't know your purpose, you don't know what God is calling you to do, or you are not even sure you know the Lord, I feel that your service here, you should really focus on that, so that at the end of the day, by the time you are doing your passing out parade, you are not as clueless as you were when they were swearing you in the camp. So thank you very much.
And on that note that you ended with, I think I also like to end on the same note by saying that the scripture encourages believers to go to the world. It says, "Go ye therefore to all the parts of the nations and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit." And let me say that if all of us decide to stay in a particular location, I hope it is not God himself that is going to end up scattering us. And that's because that's not the first time God is going to do that.
Yes.
He has done that twice in the scriptures. He did it first at Tower of Babel. He did it next after the ascension of Jesus. I mean, the disciples were just fellowshipping, worshiping, and all of that. And then persecution came, and then they had to spread all around. So, truth of the matter is that as much as some of us might want opportunities in Lagos, and those opportunities might actually exist, some of us will still need to, for the sake of purpose and fulfilling the scriptures, go all the way to those far distances to give a demo of what it means to be a Christian witness. And I think those things are very, very important. Overall, I pray that God be with everyone who comes across this video.
Yes.
We might not have satisfied everybody's curiosity, but we just hope that some way, somehow, all of this has been beneficial, all of this has been impactful. We hope that you would have learned one or two things from this. And then we hope to hear from you in the comment section, or whatever,
to hear from you.
whatever platform that looks like.
All right. So in conclusion, I would love you to pray for us.
Okay. So my prayer will be that Lord God Almighty will help everyone who comes across this video to come in line, come to understand what purpose means for them. That God will help anyone who comes in line with this video to understand what purpose means for them and how best to fulfill that purpose. That God will give us a sense of leading and direction in all our matters and in all our affairs. That above all, in whatsoever we commit our hands to, that we will be able to say that we have indeed served to the Lord, that we have indeed lived for God, and that we have lived a life that God himself is proud of, that God himself is happy about. So see you whenever I see you.
All right, see you.
And thank you so much, Messi. You're
Thank
amazing.
you, Eketi.
You're
It was
amazing.
good having you here. Thank you so much.